on Zoom today. I know a lot of stuff is going around. I myself have a little bit of a cold. I did test yesterday. It's not COVID. But I'm wearing a N95 over my normal KN94s. This will just protect you all that much more. But my voice is a little froggy, so apologies if it becomes hard to hear me at some point in time. This is the joy of being a professor. I try not to cancel class unless I'm really, really sick. Since I'm able to be upright, I do plan to teach today. I'm just gonna take a minute to check in the folks on Zoom. And then we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to start talking about theories of personality, which in my mind is like one of the more fun topics. The class I teach right after y'all is actually a whole class on theories of personality. So lots of cool stuff we can learn here. Lots of theories that, to be perfectly honest, are going to seem kind of out there to people. And then we'll talk about what seems accurate, what is not accurate on these ideas. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if I have videos. I'm gonna share just in case I do. Alrighty, gonna take these captions and hide them and turn on the other ones that do not block the screen. But I'm definitely gonna use captions because again, who knows what my voice is gonna do here. Alrighty. So what is personality? So this is like one example. Oh, hang on just a sec. I didn't realize y'all weren't seeing what I'm seeing. Give me just a second. I know how to fix this. Okay. Great. Do that again. Okay, cool. So this is like a standard book definition of personality. A pattern of enduring, distinctive traits, emotions, and behaviors that characterize the way an individual adapts to the world. But as we'll see as we go through this lecture, this is like only sort of partially accurate. This is, like each type of person we'll discuss who looked at personality is going to have their own definition. But the first thing we're going to talk about is how do we assess personality? How do we determine what somebody's personality is? So these have many different subcategories, including projectives, long form personality inventories, and self-response or report or self-report or response inventories. The latter are typically much shorter and might only be measuring one thing. You'll see the word assessment and test kind of used interchangeably. Basically, in a psychology, a test is a device for gathering information. A device for gathering information. And because we're in psychology, the information we're looking for is their psychological functioning, right? So we're gathering information about a person's psychological functioning, in this case, specifically about their personality and how that might relate to a whole host of things. Oh, one thing I did want to look at today, before we dive too far into this, is I found a couple psychology in the news articles, which I thought were really interesting, related to personality. And some of them will relate to tests. So that's what made me think of it. So for example, this one is a great read about, what type of test should we be using in like the workplace setting and how do those relate to things? So one of the things we'll talk about in a couple slides is the big 5 personality traits and the big 5 inventory. And more people are starting to use this for assessment in the workplace. And it's got some really nice relationship to how well people are going to do in certain types of jobs. The Myers-Briggs is one you may have heard more of. This is like, I'm an INFTJ or whatever. It's not as accurate as the big 5s. So again, we're seeing more and more science that reflects that. This was another really interesting one, I thought, is that your personality traits can be related to how much you buy into online conspiracy theories. And so we're seeing that things like narcissism, which is just kind of like everything rotating around you, and anxious attachment, so being really concerned that people in your life are going to leave you, are related. There's a lot more research now, unfortunately, because there has to be. Those big 5 we just talked about, they are finding some small correlations, but it's more with things like narcissism. And then this one is another one that's looking at, like relating things to performance. And what I really liked about this is they were like, yeah, personality traits can relate to how well someone does at work, but like none of that's gonna matter if you burn your people out, right? Which is so true. And so I'm glad that like people are starting to acknowledge that you can personality test people all day, but if you work them, 20 hours a day, 90 hours a week, they are just not going to perform optimally, regardless of how good they quote unquote should be at something. So the first thing we're going to talk about is projective tests, and projective tests really are what people tend to think of when they think of personality tests. Like these are the ones that are often portrayed in movies. These are things like the Rorschach ink blots. And so people hear subjects as being used here, but it could be a client, right? It could be someone in another scenario. They are supposedly projecting their personality here, because what they're going to do is interpret very vague stimuli. And the stimuli are purposely vague, or they might follow really vague open-ended instructions. And the idea is if you give them something vague, whatever answer they give is going to tell you something about their personality. These are primarily used by psychodynamic clinicians, and we'll talk about them later in this lecture. But these are people who believe that we are controlled by unconscious drives and conflicts. One thing that's really important to note here is that the validity of many of these types of assessments has been called into question, because they are so subjective, and many times people can just kind of interpret them however they want. There have been standardized scoring systems introduced to try to combat this. But for example, one of like the biggest names in like psychology myth busting, he wrote a whole book about actually the 50 myths y'all are looking at. Lilienfeld is one of the authors of that book. He was just like, projectives are bupkis, we shouldn't be using them. And yet people still do, and in fact I am fully trained in giving the Rorschach, the most common one that we think of. And so this is a Rorschach-like blot here. And so the Rorschach consists of a series of ink blots, like this one. And individuals are simply given the direction, what might this be? And then they tell the clinician. The information inferred is based on a whole host of information, including color, texture, content, which part of the block they're looking at when they tell you what they see, or if they're using the whole thing or just a part. The Rorschach was developed based on a parlor game called Blotto. So this is back when people had like fountain pens, and so they had little wells of ink. And what they would do is they would just drop the ink on a piece of paper, fold it in half, and then open it. And then the parlor game would kind of be like kids laying on their back watching clouds, and be like, this looks like a bunny, this looks like this. And then the Rorschach family kind of took that and decided to make it this test. Now, up here in the corner, this is a picture I took when I was in grad school. This is my cat, who's unfortunately passed now, Finley. I was taking the Rorschach blots to my placement site to administer them, and I put it out just to see what she'd do. And I was like, she's just gonna ignore it. It's fine. Maybe I can get a cute picture. She stared at it for a while, and I was like, okay, what are you using? And technically, based on the APA ethics code, based on sort of my challenge as a clinical psychologist, I'm not supposed to show you the actual blots. But let me show you real quickly why I don't mind showing you the actual blots. If Google will move quickly. So if you go to the Wikipedia page for the Rorschach, if you notice, that's the one I just showed you. But if you scroll on down, they have all of 10 of the ink blots here. I still don't know how these are up. The corporation you buy these from charges you $70 for like a set of these. The school paid for them for me when I got here. So I don't know how this isn't like a major copyright or like test security violation. It is, but this is why I'm like, you can look at one of the blogs on my thing, because everyone can go look at them on Wikipedia. It's problematic. Now, one thing I'll point out really quick while we are looking at all the blots is these are Freudian. These are based on various ideas about sexual urges and whatnot. So yes, the part at the top of this one is supposed to look phallic, right? And so it's sort of like, will people comment on that or won't they? But that's why, again, I don't like lose sleep over the fact that I'm showing you one of the blots. The Rorschach doesn't take very long to give. It takes maybe a half hour to administer it. Granted, I only ever gave 2 in my career. I was trained in them, and then I gave it twice. But each time I scored it, again, I was new, right, at doing it, but it would take me about 6 hours to score and interpret it. So I don't know if the information you get from it is worth that time and effort, right? Especially because you'll see some of the other ones as we go through take a lot less time. And maybe give you more info. And so this is again the one you'll see in movies where people are like, I see blood on every single one, right? And it's, again, it is still used, but we have more and more moved to much more scientific ways of assessing personality. Another projective is the thematic apperception test, or the TAT. And this involves people being shown a selection of 30 black and white cards, which show ambiguous situations. And people are asked to make up stories about these, right? And I think we might have looked at one of these in our very first lecture, right? And the idea is you kind of look at themes. One response to one image might not give you a really good complete story, but like if every single one, like let's say someone interprets this one and they're like, this woman behind her represents death, right? And then you look at this one and they're like, this guy is dead, right? You might think there's thinking a lot about death, and you might want to query, like, has anyone close to you recently died? Or have you been thinking about your own death? Things like that. And so this is, there's no standardized scoring for this. There's not even a standardized set of the cards you give. So again, there are 30 cards, and you're not supposed to give all 30. You choose a subset. And so again, I feel like this one is like really not scientific. Fun to give, but I don't know that you're going to get that much helpful information from it. Sentence completion is the easiest projective to give. And so this is where you give the person sort of vague directions. So they get a whole sheet of these. I think there's like 30 or so of them. And they are supposed to finish the sentence. And so you say, I wish, and then you see what they fill in. Do they fill in, I wish, I could be rich and famous. I wish I could pass my calculus class, right? I wish I was an Oscar Mayer wiener. I don't know, right? What do they come up with? And then again, pulling very Freudian things like my mother. My mother was a really sweet person. My mother was a horrible witch, right? My mother unfortunately died last week, right? What are they pulling? And again, just like the TAT, you're looking for patterns. Do things come up over and over and over? So the sentence completion is the projective I gave the most often when I was in grad school. Again, it was easy to administer. What's lovely is that you give the person the paper and they fill it out themselves. So you can be doing something like scoring another test, right, while they're doing it. So it's fairly efficient. And one I remember very clearly in particular, so it was someone that in our training clinic was being seen by one of my friends for therapy, but she was concerned about some memory related issues. And so I was doing memory assessments, but then I also gave her this and some other personality assessments. And now this stuff about food just kept coming up over and over and over, food and eating and like relationship to food. So after I wrapped up the assessment, that's something I mentioned to my friend who was her therapist. And she told me about a week later, she's like, I brought it up to my client. It turns out, yeah, she's stress eating, she's binge eating. It's something she's never brought up before, right? So it's something that we want to make sure we address, and we're going to address it in therapy. So sometimes something like this will bring up something they don't feel comfortable expressing, or might not even realize is weighing on them. Again, the idea that this is like really open-ended and easy and kind of fun, right, to fill out. People like when you give them a projective because it feels cool. That, you can get some different information. So what I was most trained in, and what's honestly used the most both in research and in clinical work now, are personality inventories. And these are very broad, often long tests. We're talking 300 plus questions, designed to measure a whole bunch of different personality characteristics. They focus on behaviors, beliefs, and feelings. It's all self-report. Typically what you do is either put them in a room with like, it's kind of like taking the SAT, but about yourself, right? There's like a bubble sheet. Or more and more, these are actually being administered on a computer. So, again, put them in a room with a computer and then check back in when they're done. People also like that because they feel like they can be more open if you're not sitting there staring at them, right? And it's important to note that only standardized psychological personality tests should be used in clinical practice and in research. A personality inventory from a magazine or online might be fun, but not necessarily accurate. So this is kind of poking fun at like BuzzFeed type quizzes, right? It's like, welcome to what color are you quiz. You answer your favorite color and it says you are red. Red is the color of anything red, right? And so kind of poking fun at this goofy quizzes. And I don't think any of us really use those to be like, this is my personality, right? But there are some of those that maybe are a little less obvious that they're, fake. So the one that I am the most trained on, because we had several researchers who worked on this, like leading people in the field in my graduate school, is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. All y'all need to remember is MMPI. The original MMPI was 567 self-statements. We're now on the third version of it, and I believe it's 335. So they've cut it down quite a bit. And they answer it simply by, it's a true false. They read a sentence and they say, this is true of me, or this is false of me. There is, like, if they leave it blank, that's considered a cannot say. But most people will fill it all out. Some examples of MMPI items are, I would rather win than lose in a game. I am never happier than when alone. My hardest battles are with myself. There are a variety of clinical scales that assess symptoms of disorders, like symptoms of depression. And then there are these validity scales built in. And these assess, is that person telling the truth? Or are they maybe trying to what we call fake bad? And this is often just like a cry for help, where people will endorse more things than they're actually feeling, just because they're like, no, I really need help. Please keep me in therapy. Please help me. We also want to be aware of people faking good, right? And especially like the MMPI is used quite a bit in like child custody cases. And there are items on there like, I read the newspaper from cover to cover every day. Like, no one does that, right? No one's reading all the classifieds and whatnot. And it's to get at people who are just trying so hard to make themselves look good so that they get their kiddo, right? And so you need to know that when you go to interpret it. Scores of 65 and higher are interpreted. Some more sample items here. I'm sure I get a raw deal for life. Evil spirits possess me at times. Most people make friends because friends are likely useful to them. Nobody knows it, but I've tried to kill myself. And some of these are critical items that you can go to and look at right away. If your client is endorsing those, you want to make sure, let's not have you leave from your office until we're sure you can be safe until the next time I see you. This is a general idea of what an MMPI profile might look like. This is certainly not all the scales. But what you would see is you first see the validity scales. Are they responding to this truthfully, openly, honestly? And then you look at where they're elevated on other things. So this person's highest elevation is on scale 2, which is the depression scale. That's immediately what you'd want to pick up on, start treatment planning around depressive symptoms. There are other MMPI-like tests, and one of those is the Personality Assessment Inventory, or PAI. I had learned about this, but I didn't learn how to give it until I was on my residency year, because the VA uses the PAI a lot. And in fact, at least back in 2009, 2010, when I was there, it was integrated into their system. So if you had your client take it on the computer at the VA, it would just populate their scores right into their chart, just like if you took a blood test type thing. Whereas other types of tests, you would have to hand score them and then put in the results. So the PAI is 388 items. Oh, I have 344 here. That's probably more accurate, actually. So 344 items. Instead of being just true false, it's like a Likert scale, which is those scales you see where it's like 1 is not true of me, 5 is totally true of me. And this one goes from false, slightly true, mainly true, to very true. You may hear some skepticism in my voice, and that's simply because just looking at this in terms of test construction, I wonder if the average person looking at those responses really knows the difference between like mainly and very true for themselves, right? It's sort of a vague descriptor. This also has validity scales to see, are they responding accurately? It has clinical scales, treatment consideration scales, and interpersonal scales. Oh, one thing I forgot to say about the MMPI is the more recent versions incorporate a lot of this as well, and even have like a big 5 personality inventory embedded in the MMPI. This is what a PAI output looks like. What I do like about the PAI scoring and output is this blue line up here. So the black line is the person's actual scores. The blue line up top is what they call the skyline. And this is the average score for someone in that setting. So, if you're seeing someone in like an outpatient setting, they're coming to your office and then they're leaving to go home. There's a different skyline than if you're seeing someone in like an inpatient setting, right? Who are probably going to have higher symptoms, things like that. So it's really nice to have that reference. Some other stuff about the PAI. It was developed by basically asking people who are experts in various like clinical subfields what they think they should, like what items should we be using to measure that. So the test creators described it as being developed conceptually. Some sample items from the PAI. People are afraid of my temper. People once close to me have let me down. I could talk my way out of just about anything. We all know those people, right? Who's like never actually gotten a ticket, because every time they somehow magically talk themselves out of it. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. So now we're going to talk about self-report or response inventories. And these are questionnaires completed by the individual that really focus in on one specific area of functioning. So we've got affective, which will include things like mood. So you might have a personality or a self-report inventory that just looks at depression. You might look at behaviors like social skills, right? What social skills do they have? Or don't they have? And then cognitive, looking at their thoughts and assumptions about themselves. So for example, in my dissertation project, one of the questionnaires that we use asked people about perfectionism and sort of how they thought about approaching things. This is one of the most widely used self-report questionnaires. It's the Beck Depression Inventory. It is 21 items that look like this. So this is a 7th of the test right up here. And it's a little bit of a different question style than pretty much any questionnaire I've ever seen, but I kind of like it. So for each item, instead of being like, here's a question, rate how much you agree with it, each one has its own sort of internal Likert scale. So for example, for ideas of suicide, it goes from 0, I don't have any thoughts of killing myself, to 1, I have thoughts of killing myself, but I would not carry them out. 2, I would like to kill myself. 3, I would kill myself if I had the chance. Right, so it gets increasingly concerning. Work inhibition goes from 0, I can work about as well as before, to 3, I can't get anything done at all. What I like about the Beck Depression Inventory in particular, and a lot of these type of inventories, is they're not just asking about symptoms that you would check off a list to diagnose the people. They also ask about things that genuinely affect that person's life. So for example, loss of libido. I haven't noticed any recent change in my interest in sex. I'm less interested in sex than I used to be, I'm much less interested in sex now, or I've lost interest in sex completely. And this is really good to include for a couple reasons. One, we know that this is a symptom of depression. It's something that can profoundly affect people's life, particularly if they're in a relationship, right? And sex is typically part of that for them. It also is something that some therapists might feel awkward to ask about out loud, but you get that information. Because the Beck Depression Inventory is so quick to give, it usually takes clients 5 minutes or less to fill it out. A lot of therapists who are treating people for depression will actually have them fill this out every week to monitor how much symptoms are changing. Alrighty, so the next thing I'm gonna have you all do is do a little personality test for yourselves. So if you have your computer, you can find this linked in the slides. If you want to just do it on your phone, you can type this in. Again, this is something that I do not need to see your results for you. But let me show you real quick what this will open into. So it is just an online assessment. You'll click it and you'll fill out 50 questions. So it does take a little bit to fill it out. I'm going to give you guys time to do that in class. And then it will give you some feedback and information about your personality traits. So again, here is the link. I will leave that up. And while y'all start to take that, I'm going to go blow my nose. I'll be right back. What does it say? Oh, interesting. And if it's like you typed in the link, you didn't click on it? Huh. Anyone else getting that themselves? You're getting the webpage not available? Weird. Like you just clicked the slide and just giving you that? Okay. Yeah, here, let me go to Blackboard and I'll just put the link on Blackboard to make it a little easier. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's on the Google link. It's not on the PowerPoint version. So, but I can just throw it on here. What I'll do is I'll make it an announcement and then y'all should get an email with the link too. And folks on Zoom, you can be following this link as well. All right, that should come to y'all's email pretty quickly, and you can try that. Sometimes clicking it works better than trying to type it in. Yeah. Oh, it works. Good, good, good. Clean up some of this in the background. And again, like I said, this is gonna be for y'all. You don't have to share your results with me, but you will get credit for doing it. It's like an assignment. I will put in now. Is anybody done with it yet? Couple hours. Okay, cool. We'll do like another few minutes, so if you're done, feel free to just like check your email, do whatever you need to do. Yeah. What's that? Obnoxious. I do not know how to fix that. See if they have like a contact you thing. I mean, you don't need them, but I'm sure you're interested.
It's weird, like, it has the description, so
Uh-huh.
it won't show you, I guess the
Oh,
results
they're
are
supposed
supposed
to
to be like.
Yeah, did you try scrolling down a lot? Like her descriptions are way at the bottom.
Yeah.
But the actual are so weird.
Yeah.
Well, at least you're getting the descriptions. I don't know, man. The internet's a great thing, but sometimes it's like. Maybe it was better back when people used to like write on projector. At least you were consistent, right? You knew it was there. Oh, I was just seeing a chat here. Yeah, Gabby, hopefully you got the email that has it in there. But hang on just a sec for Zoom folks. I will go ahead and copy paste it as well. If I can find the chat, there it is. There we go. Like I'm saving a lot of paper and trees, right? By not having y'all fill out a paper and pencil one. But if I had a paper and pencil one, then y'all could all just fill it out, right? Alrighty, so even if you're not done, you can keep taking it while we're chatting. And again, the picture isn't gonna work on the results, but it looks like if you scroll down, you'll be able to see your descriptors, which are like the more important ones, honestly. And so what we just took a test of is personality traits. So these are stable personality characteristics that are presumed to exist within an individual. And they guide our thoughts and actions under various conditions. So the idea is if you have certain personality traits, you should react generally in the same way, or at least in a consistent way, to different situations, different problems you run into, or good things you run into. And so what you just took a test of are the big 5 personality traits. And these are the most common ones that are studied now within psychology. Again, as we look at the psychology in the news, these are starting to be used a lot in working environments to see like fit to a job. And the way to remember them is with the acronym OCEAN. So if you look at the first letter of each one, it spells ocean. So openness to experience is being inventive, curious. These folks have appreciation for art, emotion, adventure. They'll sometimes have unusual ideas and curiosity, and be curious about having a variety of different experiences. In some cultures, openness to experience correlates really highly with intelligence, but that's not consistent from culture to culture. We do tend to find at least some variation of the big 5 across cultures. Conscientiousness, not consciousness, right? This is not if you're awake or asleep, but conscientiousness is being efficient and organized. And these folks have a tendency to show self-discipline. They tend to be very achievement oriented if you're high on this one, act very dutifully. And these people like to plan things rather than doing things spontaneously. Now, one thing I didn't say, and I realized this and sort of caught myself as I was talking just then, is some people think these are like dichotomous. It's like you have this trait or you don't. But in fact, all of these traits are like on a spectrum, right? So your score is going to fall somewhere along that spectrum. And so, for example, yes, people who are high on openness to experience are inventive and curious, but there are also people who score low on this, and they might be more cautious. Same thing for conscientiousness. People who score high are going to be efficient and organized, but people who are scoring low might be easygoing, sometimes careless. Extroversion, I think, is the one that most people know and understand. We use this more in sort of like everyday speak, right? Talking about being an extrovert versus an introvert. So scoring high on this, you tend to be outgoing and energetic. scoring low on this, you tend to be shy and reserved. So you have energy, positive emotions, and people who are really high on this trait seek out the company of others. Like that's where they feel the best. Agreeableness, we're going from high being friendly and compassionate to low scores being maybe more competitive. These folks tend to want to get along with others. They tend to be cooperative rather than antagonistic if they're scoring high. Sometimes people are scoring really low on agreeableness. It's like they are suspicious of other people, almost paranoid. Neuroticism is the only one that's sort of valence negative. And so if you score high on neuroticism, and neuroticism is an old-fashioned word that kind of just refers to anxiety. So high scores here are very sensitive and nervous, while low scores are secure and confident. People who are high on neuroticism have a tendency to experience unpleasant emotions easily, like anger, anxiety, depression, or vulnerability. And as I mentioned, we do tend to see these replicate across various cultures. So the trait perspective, as I said, is one of the most popular right now. People really believe personality traits are a thing and that this is where our research should focus. There's research that says that personality traits actually relate to health, how we think about things. I mentioned career success, but also interpersonal relationships, whether those are friendships, coworkers, or romantic. Some criticisms of the trait perspective is that it ignores the role of the situation in behavior and how people in extraordinary circumstances might act in extraordinary ways that have nothing to do with their personality, right? It also can ignore the nuances of an individual's personality if we're just sort of chunking everything into traits. Alrighty, so on Monday, we'll start talking about Freud. Yay! All right. Have a good weekend, everybody. If anyone's going to be at FinFest tomorrow, I will be there with my family.